Hello, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Elements of Success. Today, we are concluding our our arc about energy and how your energy, your mind, your boundaries are all intertwined. And so today we're going to be wrapping up this very important topic by actually talking about how to establish energetic boundaries. And this is huge. This is so important. This is definitely an area in my own life that I was severely lacking for a really, really long time. So, this episode in particular is for you if you struggle with boundaries, if you struggle with how to articulate your own needs, if you maybe even think that your boundaries are selfish or not right or anything like that, this is for you. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you here live. So let's dive in today. Again, like I said, this is the end of our air arc. And just in case this is your first time tuning in, I'm Safriana Luna, LCPCMS. I'm a licensed trauma therapist turned transformational mentor, also known as the Queer Spirit Guide, because I know we're all different and that deserves to be celebrated. And all of our boundaries are different too. So let's honor that as well. Hi, Nancy. Good to see you too. So, last time we talked about energy leaks, all of these different areas of your life where you could be hemorrhaging your own energy, your own life force without realizing it. So, just here now, whether you tuned into that or not, what were your biggest energy drains this last week? Just kind of thinking, maybe it was. For me, it was upcoming things, really thinking about what was coming and what I needed to get done to prepare for that because we are in the middle of a big move and trying to get a house on the market and all kinds of chaos. So that's been a huge energy leak for me. But the more that I check the boxes and I make sure I return to ensure things are wrapped up and get their resolution, right, the less that energy leak can continue to happen. And then what outstanding tasks did you notice creating background energy leaks? For example, for me, like packing, right? And did you identify any patterns in when you are operating from desire versus commitment versus discomfort? And I think I'm going to talk briefly about that again today, but the spectrum from being only in desire on one end to being only in discomfort on the other end, and where we want to be, which is commitment, which combines both desire and discomfort to find the middle ground, which is where we can really take action. Lisa's adapting to new living situation. That's a huge energy drain, right? When we're adopting new behaviors, new energies, new situations, it really does take a toll on us for a while. So we also get to think of how we get to protect our energy. And that's what today is all about. So, how do we protect our energy? We do it through conscious boundary setting. And boundaries are self love. I really want to sell this. Boundaries are self love. When you set boundaries, you're recognizing that your energy is sacred and it deserves to be protected, that you have the right to prioritize your well being, that you cannot give from an empty cup, and that your needs matter as much as everyone else's. This was a really hard one for me to digest. I thought, well, everyone else's needs are more important than mine. Their desires are more important than mine. I just need to give and give and give and self-sacrifice and I'll get my reward eventually. It's not how it works. That is not how it works. We can give so much more when we have filled our cup first and when we have really respected and created a container for our boundaries so that we can do what is ours to do in the world. So they are the foundation. Our boundaries are the foundation of what makes authentic and sustainable relationships possible. And when we model these healthy boundaries, we also give other people permission to do the same, which is so important. Because, like I said, I used to have no boundaries, like literally none. I was completely boundaryless. And that made me very, very sick over time. So it's important to understand that, energetic boundaries, when I talk about energy, some people may have no clue what I'm talking about, and that is okay. You can swap in energy for life here. You can swap in energy for, your internal power, right? What I'm getting at when I talk about energetic boundaries is how you are showing up in the world with your life force and doing what's yours to do. So, boundaries, what they actually are conscious limits around your time, attention, emotional availability, and that life force energy. They are internal decisions about what you will accept and won't accept, or what you will engage with and won't engage with. They are protective guidelines that preserve your energy for the things you actually want to do, for what matters most to you. And in a way, they're sort of like permeable membranes that filter out depletion while allowing nourishing connections. So, our boundaries, you are the arbiter of your own boundaries. You get to determine how you assert them. And so, you also get to decide when you relax them. Good morning. I'm guessing that's Amy over there. So, what boundaries are not? We have so many miscommunications and misunderstandings about what boundaries are and what they are not. So, boundaries are not walls that keep everyone out. They are not demands or ultimatums about what other people need to do. They are not ways to control other people's behavior. And they are not punishments or forms of rejection. So many people say they're asserting a boundary when they're really telling someone else to do what to do. And so, this is where I really want to dispel the myth. Your boundaries are not a circle that you draw around somebody else. They are a circle you draw around you. And you say, this can come inside my boundary line. That stays out of my boundary line. Your boundaries are what you are willing to put yourself into and what you're going to get yourself out of. So, what do you do about your own feelings of guilt? We'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about what to do when other people are rejecting your boundaries. But the biggest thing is to remember that your boundaries are your way of saying, I want to continue this relationship with you. I want to continue this dynamic or this work or this whatever with you. And this is what I need to be able to do that. And then you can ask other people, right? Are you willing to respect this boundary? Are you willing to play in these lines with me? And if you get a yes, great. And if you get a no, sad, but that's information. Guilt comes when we're guilt tripped for having our boundaries. Because again, there should be no reason to feel guilty about a boundary if the boundary is saying, this is how I can stay in this situation with love and be anchored in a healthy way. That should be celebrated. But we've been punished for having boundaries and saying no in the past. That's true. So that is absolutely something that we need to continue to navigate and work through. What boundaries, do is when they're properly stated, when we're articulating them, we know what we need. They are creating conscious choice about where our energy goes. So, Lisa, you are more than welcome to drop an example in if you want me to speak to a specific example. But let's say I'll use a real life example. There are a couple different social groups that I hang out with, right? And some of the social groups have a bigger energy drain on me because they're bigger groups. Sometimes there can be a couple people that hang out in the group that kind of just I don't vibe with the same way that I vibe with some others. And so I create a conscious choice about when and where I'm going to engage with that group and for how long, right? Versus another social group, I could hang out with them for both of my weekend days for 8 hours each and be totally fine. It's a smaller group and we have a more intimate connection where we kind of all know each other in a different way. So I can choose to put my energy there consciously and have a 16-hour social engagement. Whereas with another group, I might be able to do 16 minutes, right? Drop in and out, or like an hour, maybe two. So our boundaries might be completely different based on the people, the situations, the circumstances, but they're meant to preserve our energy. If I go hang out with that one social group that's really, really big and I'm there for 6 hours, I'm probably going to be down for the count for like 2 weeks afterwards, just completely socially depleted. So I have to know where my limits are with that. And this prevents automatic energy depletion from external demands. Speaking about that guilt for drawing boundaries, I remember with this one group, Um, they meet every morning at 7:30 for a breath practice, and I was like, I can't get up at 7:30 every morning in good conscience, and based on my own energy as an ADHD person where there are higher cortisol in the morning, more grogginess. It was actually like depleting my mood to get up, even though I got to see these people that I loved and cared about. The cost was more energy depleting than it was giving me something. And I had to say to the group, like, I really love you all, but I'm not getting up at 7:30 to do this with you. Like, I'll catch you where I catch you, but I can't do this. And I did feel some guilt for that. I felt some shame for that. I wondered, why was I different? Why couldn't I do this and fit in with everyone else? But I had to recognize, oh, this is depleting my energy because my body needs more rest time before being forced out of bed with an alarm. I need a slow wake up. And so I would rather show up authentically than reactively or feeling like I have to fit in with this group. And so that was part of my, navigating that over time. Navigating between hanging out with my cousins I've recently moved in with, yet having my much needed alone time. Yeah. And that's, well, I'll use some examples. I'll come back to that of how we might articulate that as some boundaries. But we have to protect our capacity to do what is ours to do, what we want to do, what we long to do, how we want to spend our energy. So if we don't have boundaries, we don't have the capacity to do what we want to do because we're giving it away freely in these other places without boundaries where we're probably overdoing it, overgiving. And again, our energetic boundaries create space for rest and creativity and aligned action, which, as we go into the fire arc, is all about aligned action. And continuing on this thread, if we don't have clear boundaries, every external demand becomes our emergency. Oh my gosh, I could talk for eons about this one. When I didn't have good energetic boundaries with my phone, for example, and I'd be spending time with my boyfriend. This was in our early stages of dating. I had this other friend who was constantly in crisis mode. There was always something bad happening. She really, really struggled with kind of a victim mindset. And I really, really felt for her because she reminded me so much of me in years past. And the moment I would get a message from her, I would be on my phone. I wouldn't care who else was around me or what else was going on. I'd literally be on the phone to try and soothe her and show up for her and talk to her and talk her down and be there for her 24/7. And this ended up completely draining and depleting me, as you can imagine. This was simultaneous with me figuring out I had fibromyalgia. So it was like a blaring beacon that I had to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm creating emergencies out of everyone else's external demands. Family member messages in their own version of crisis, I'm dropping everything, right? Like it was just constantly dropping my own needs for everyone else's, and this caused a huge toll. So external demands are always going to be there, but we don't have to meet every single one. And, this was reacting instead of responding consciously. I would just react and respond right away. I wouldn't even give myself a breath to assess, like, is this mine to handle? How do I want to interface with this? What's mine to give, etc. And so this led to that energy leak we were talking about last time through unconscious overgiving and people pleasing, which the guilt really layers into that, right? I want to be good. I want to show up for my people. I want to be the best friend or partner or whatever. But then we overgive and we people please, and then we have nothing left for ourselves. And this leads to depletion and illness and all kinds of stuff. So if we don't have those boundaries, we're going to give from that sense of obligation rather than choice. And when we're not making a choice, we're not empowered. And a lot of us will even narrate like, well, I don't have a choice, but we do. We as adults almost always have a choice. Like 99.9999% of the time, we have a choice. We just don't think we do. So as we've been exploring, this whole series, I've been talking about our 5 different bodies, our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and communal bodies. So what do our boundaries look like across these sort of 5 domains? So our physical body boundaries, obviously your physical space, your body has boundaries, and there are certain boundaries that I really wish everyone in the collective understood about the sanctity of our bodies. because no one should touch our body or do anything to our body that we did not give explicit permission, consent to. So obviously our physical body is boundary. Our sensory needs and environmental preferences can be boundaries. Like, as an example, I cannot live with dogs. Think they're so cute. I wish I could pet them. I wish I could get their little kisses. I wish that we could snuggle on the couch, but I can't. Between my sensory needs for smell and sound and my allergies, I have the choice that I am not going to live with dogs. That is my boundary. So if I had a potential roommate and that potential roommate was like, I have a dog, I'd be like, I'm so sorry. This is not going to work for me because I'm not inviting what is not for me into my bubble, my circle around me. Our time and our schedule is something we have boundaries around. Obviously, if you're working a 9 to 5, you might not have a choice in your schedule, but you could potentially someday have a choice for another job, right? We determine how we spend our time and what we put in our schedule, how we spend our free time. So I know there's a lot of nuance there with modern capitalism that I'm not going to soapbox about right now. And in some cases, we really may feel like we do not have a choice in certain aspects of that. But again, our free time, how we even spend that time, the energy we show up with in that time, all a thing. And then our needs for our physical space, our belongings, our body, our physical comfort are all pretty obvious. And then our energy levels and our needs for rest also have to do with that body-based boundaries. Yeah, it's so easy to forget we're not stuck in the same patterns that we were as children because our brain is still keeping us in that status quo. So that is mental body boundaries, our thoughts and our beliefs, our attention and our focus, our mental capacity and our cognitive load, our decision making process, and our need for mental space and quiet time or processing time in the quiet. All of this is so needed for all of us, but we're going to have different boundaries around that. Some people, my spouse, for example, can socialize a lot longer than I can. I am a hermit by design. I need a lot of quiet time. I need a lot of like in my own space, in my own energy time to clear my thoughts, to be able to do some journaling and see where my beliefs are coming through, right? And sometimes we need to draw a new boundary with ourselves mentally and say, I'm unwilling to entertain this old belief anymore. Every time this belief comes in, I'm going to work on rerouting it to a new belief. That can be an internal boundary that we're exploring. So we absolutely can have mental boundaries even in ourselves. Our emotional body boundaries have to do with our feelings, our emotional responses, how much emotional labor we're willing to give, our caregiving capacity, our need for emotional support versus giving support, our window of tolerance and our triggers. We've talked a little bit about that window of tolerance where we go up into anxiety or down into depression, right? So we might need to have some boundaries around recognizing what knocks us up into that anxiety or down into that depression. And of course, that emotional processing time that goes hand in hand with that mental piece. So, emotional boundaries can really look like recognizing when we are overextending our emotional capacity. Or we're putting ourselves in situations that are super triggering and we keep showing up and we keep doing it. That might be I need to stop doing that to myself. I need to figure out a new way of being in relationship with us. Our spiritual body boundaries have to do with our values, what we will and will not compromise on, how we make meaning and pursue our purpose in the world, and our spiritual practices, our sacred time, our connection to something larger than ourselves, and our authentic self expression. Uh, really, for me, like an example of a spiritual boundary is like I will not let in any quote unquote dark entities or forces. Like I don't believe in that the bad juju. I refuse to let it in. If it exists, I'm not letting it in. That is my boundary spiritually. And if you're a person of faith, like I have always just been like my guides, God, Jesus, the universe, whomstever has this. I don't have to carry this. They've got my back. Spiritual boundaries can be I am always going to make every effort to touch base with the seasons, with the 8 holidays of the wheel of the year, with the new moons and full moons. If I don't do that, if I relax that sort of guideline for myself, I feel really depleted. I energy drain because I'm not connecting with myself in a way that's really important. And then finally, this is what we really think of when we think of boundaries is more external, what how we're relating to other people. So our communal or community body, our body outside of ourselves, has to do with our social energy, our availability, the relationships we have, who gets access to our time and our energy, our communication preferences and our response times, our capacity for group activities versus alone time, right? I've talked a lot about this. This is all intertwined in those other boundaries as we're assessing them for ourselves. How does that change our relationship with what's outside of us? And then our role in various communities and what we will and won't take on. So, again, this is a lot of what we think about when we think about boundaries because we think about them as being things we have to draw with other people. And that is true, but it's also really something we're drawing within ourselves. So, if I say, I'm not available for these really big group things all the time, I will go once every 2 to 3 months. That feels good for me versus small group I could do every weekend, right? So everybody is going to have different needs based on their blueprint, their gifts, their constitution, all of it. There's no one size fits all. But let's talk about how we might word this. So, again, a boundary is an internal decision. A demand is trying to control others or telling them what to do. Boundaries are ultimately about what you will do, whereas demands are about what others must do. And when we get a demand from someone else, it doesn't feel good. So I just want to preface with that, right? When someone else says, I need you to do the dishes, feels really yucky. If it's something like, hey, you agreed that you were going to do the dishes today. Is that still something that you are going to do? Not a demand. We're like, oh, yeah, I did agree to do that, right? So I just want to really, really caveat that anytime we're saying to someone else, I need you to do, their brain is going to perceive that as a threat. That's a fight because we're telling them what to do. And we don't like to be told what to do by other people. Doesn't feel good. Puts us back in feeling like we're a kid being told what to do by an authority figure. It's not what we want in a healthy, happy relationship or coworker relationship, any kind of relationship as an adult. So I need 24 hours to respond to non-urgent requests. Totally reasonable. That is a boundary we can have within ourselves. I don't discuss work during personal time. Totally a boundary we can respect in ourselves. I take Sundays for rest and I don't schedule anything. That is a boundary we have control over. I need to step away from this conversation to recharge. I want to revisit this later. That is a boundary we have control over. So, again, your boundaries are your internal decision. I need this and I am going to do this for myself, or I am not going to do this for myself. On the flip side, demands might sound like, you need to stop texting me so much. You can't talk about work when I'm at home. You have got to respect my Sunday rest time. You're being too intense right now. Right? See how that shifts? It's putting the onus on someone else to change instead of us to uphold what's right for us. Your boundary, your circle drawn around you, you get to walk that circle away anytime you need to. Okay, maybe not from your small children if you're a parent. Right? But from other adults, from situations that aren't for you, you have the power to move your bubble away and to say no. And I do just want to put here, like, I am a survivor of domestic violence and like repeated domestic violence throughout my life. And I know how hard it can be to break that fear chain once someone really has tried to exert control over you or has physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, etc., harmed you. We can get very frozen in this, like, well, I can't say no, or I can't make another choice because it's not going to go the way that I need it to go. And these people are demanding I do this and I change. And we get so stuck in this that we forget we can move our boundary away. And in cases of violence, of course, we may need to rely on outside help. We might need to get help from an agency or from other people to help us get out of that situation. But most of the time, that's not the situation. Most of the time, it's more mental prisons where we have convinced ourselves that we can't leave, we can't escape. And then, as I said, if you have survived something like that, that mental prison can be even stronger because you do actually have evidence of that control in some way. So I just want to say that really gently. So, the language of energy preserving boundaries is things like I need, not you need to. Okay. Again, you need to demand. I need is owning where I'm at. So, I need quiet time in the evenings to restore my energy. I'm going to go back to this example from Lisa of hanging out with cousins and also needing alone time and kind of feeling some guiltiness around that. No need, right? Hey, I love spending time with you all so much. And I've also noticed that my social battery gets really drained after a little while, and I really need quiet time in the evenings or the afternoon or twice a week or whatever it might be in order to be in my own energy and make sure that I feel really restored so I can keep socializing, right? We can talk about a little bit more if we want to. We don't owe anyone an explanation. It could literally just be like, "Hey, I can't hang out cuz I need some quiet time to just get back in myself." That can be totally fine. But we can also with people we love talk about it a little bit. "Hey, I'm noticing like I've been over giving and over socializing in these ways. And it's a pattern of mine that I'm really, really working on as I'm moving into this next leg of my journey. And I would love if you all would be encouraging of me as I, do this hard thing of actually taking my alone time. Would you all be willing to cheer me on in that and know that I'm going to be able to socialize with you better? Right? Like, I think that that can be really, really uplifting to own what we need. So, some more examples. I need advance notice before schedule changes. This is me through and through. I always say, you can cancel anything on me last minute. I will be okay. Do not, however, add things to my schedule. I'm not going to take them. I need advance notice for anything to be added onto my plate. So, if someone wants to hang out, I'm going to request of them, hey, would you be willing to? This is the communicating with other people. So we know what our limit is. Now we ask, would you be willing to meet me here by doing this thing instead of saying, so you need to? So I need advance notice before schedule changes. Would you be willing to let me know at least 2 weeks in advance if there's an event that you'd like me to attend, or if you want to schedule something out? I really like 2 weeks notice if that's possible. Otherwise, I may not, or I'm very likely to say no. That's the boundary. I need to limit our conversation to 30 minutes today. This is one I struggle with. I have a lot of friends I'll get on the phone with. Next thing I know, it's been 2 hours. But when there are time limits and we know them, saying I need to limit our conversation to this time. At the end of that time, I'm gonna disconnect. Right. I need to focus on my own projects this week. I need to be focused on my own life right now. Whatever. So that's the I need, not what you need to do for me, but what I need. And then we can ask, are you willing to meet me here in this way? So I am and I'm not available for statements are another way to look at boundaries. So I'm not available for emotional support right now, but I do care about you. I am available for work communication during business hours only. I'm taking a break from giving advice right now. I oh boy, I've been there in that one. I'm not available to discuss this topic, but I am open to talking about other things, right? These can still feel like they can come with that little bit of guilt, shame, fear. Are we disappointing someone? Like we can have these very real human responses, but then I encourage you to consider if you knew one of these things to be true for someone else. So someone else deep inside has this boundary of I'm emotionally tapped out and I am not able to discuss certain topics right now, right? And you knew this. Would you really want to go and discuss that topic with them? Would you really want to go and take that energy that they just told you that they didn't have? Like how would that feel for you on that end to continue to move forward with literally pressing through someone's boundaries that they've articulated? Doesn't really feel good. So this is part of the where we need to I want to say put our thinking caps on, but like our perspective caps and really put the shoe on the other foot and consider, are the people that I'm in relationship with the kind of people who want to respect my energetic boundaries? Are they going to cheer me on in taking care of myself? Because if not, there's a deeper issue there because we don't want in loving relationships for other people to violate themselves, for them to drain themselves, to deplete themselves on our behalf. That's not what love feels like. That can be what abuse feels like. It can be what bullying feels like. It can be what a lot of unhealthy things look like. But ultimately, in a loving, healthy relationship, these boundaries help us have these essential guide rails so we don't drain one another. And we want to respect other people's boundaries. So, I'm just going to give a few very brief examples here of some key areas a lot of people struggle with boundaries in. So, you might feel called out. Again, I could talk for 15 hours about all the different types of boundaries and examples, but I wanted to give you some really like salient points. So, technological boundaries. Reclaiming your attention is essential at this point in time. How many of you have caught yourself scrolling Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or any of the other number of websites that we can and apps we can scroll on now? And the next thing you know, it's been 2 hours and you're like, holy heck, where did my time go? We have really, really poor collective technological boundaries now. Most of us, first thing in the morning, we reach for our phone. We're constantly fending off those notifications. We are hooked in, scrolling, right? So, some examples of ways we could be protecting our energy would be to turn off non essential notifications, to create specific times to look at our email, our social media, our phone, using blue light filters. I've talked about this in other ones. I want to come back to it. Blue light filter, essential for sleep. So, if you are using your phone late at night, and you're not using a blue light filter, that's an easy boundary that you could have so that at least your brain has a little bit of a boundary that you're not beaming a tiny sun directly into your retinas. Tech free zones or times. I notice when myself and my loved ones are overly connected on their phones when we're trying to socialize or have a meal together, right? It doesn't feel good. So, having certain preserved spaces, boundaries around where we will and will not take our phone can be really rejuvenating. And then auto responses. I actually have a 24/7 autoresponder on my email. So every time you send me an email, well, every time after 4 days, I think it's a 4-day window that you get the autoresponder, but it says, I might take extra time to get back to your email, but I will hold it until I have the time and attention to give to it. Here's what to do if you need me now. So, some example tech boundaries: I check email twice daily at 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. I respond to text within 24 hours unless it's urgent. I don't use my phone for the first hour after I wake up. I'm only available for calls between 2 and 5 on weekdays. All of these things would be reasonable boundaries to create for yourself. Work boundaries. Your energy has value. And again, if you work a 9 to 5, you might have demands placed on you by management or a supervisor or whatever. If you're an entrepreneur like myself, you might have poor energetic boundaries around when you are and are not going to work. This is something that I have been in an ongoing relationship with, slowly pivoting to where I do not work before 11 a.m. Before 11 a.m., I'm not on calls unless it's absolutely essential. I do not get on my computer. We're still working on the phone piece. It's a work in progress. But in terms of your energy and your work, you need to have clear start and stop times or something that is your edges, because I know so many of us can overwork ourselves. The productivity culture and hustle and grind is like ingrained in us. So it's very hard to resist these old programs. But the more that we set these clear boundaries, the more we take back our power and our energy. Communicating our response time frames. So for me with clients, I say usually 24 to 48 hours. In reality, for my like pocket guidance on call clients, it's usually 4 hours, usually, unless I'm on vacation or it's a weekend. And I clearly communicate that to people in advance. Like, I'm not going to be available from here to here. So anything that you send in that time, I will get back to you, but I am not going to be available for any emergency coaching or anything like that, right? Saying no to projects that don't align with your priorities. I am so guilty of this. I will volunteer to help anyone with their project. And I had to stop doing that because I was getting myself into, 80 to several hundred hours of work on other people's projects that were not paying me, that were not giving me something back, that were not advancing my life in any way. But I felt like I had to give that energy to these people's time or to their dreams. And yeah, that's that people pleasing pattern, those poor boundaries all over again. So it is okay to say no. Taking actual lunch breaks and vacation times. I, for the longest time, was eating at my desk while I was working all the time. And carving out those meal times and spaces to actually get up and move my body and get away from the desk was essential in reclaiming my energy. Limiting after hours availability. So pretty much any job you're on, there can be, some kind of after hours interaction, whether it's getting an email or a call from a boss or a text message or whatever. Very, very important that we know what our limits are there and that we don't fall into those negative patterns because it can be really hard to recover from them, right? So again, some examples. I handle urgent matters during business hours only. I need 2 days to review this proposal thoroughly. I'm not available for weekend meetings unless it's a true emergency. I need to check my capacity before taking on an additional project. These are just, again, I'm not available, I am available, I need more information, right? We're saying what we need in the situation. And then our last example here is relationship boundaries, because we deserve to love without depletion. And when I say relationships here, I do not mean just romantic relationships, family, friendships, neighbors, coworkers, etc. So healthy relationship energy exchange. You can care without carrying others' emotions. You can support without sacrificing your well-being. You can love without losing yourself. And you can be present without being constantly available. Again, going back to that example of that friendship I had where I was glued to my phone all the time because anytime this person, pretty much every time the person messaged me, it was like a bad feeling. This person was probably feeling triggered or down in some way. And so I would carry her emotions. I would sacrifice my well being and stop what I was doing, whether it was eating or cleaning or whatever, to give this person my time and attention. I lost myself completely and I was constantly available. All of that was major drain. And, it did not benefit me or this person in the end, ultimately, because I was enabling her to keep depending on me to be there for her. So we can reorient to, we can care, support, love, and be present. And it doesn't have to be 24/7, and it can respect our own limits. So most relationship area issues kind of fall into emotional labor and caregiving roles, advice giving and problem solving, social plans and availability, our personal space and our alone time, and then the topics we will and won't discuss. So it has been a game changer for me to say, even in romantic relationships, I'm not available 24/7 for you. I need my own time and space. So, would you be willing to schedule some times where we're going to hang out? Or can we make, every Wednesday from 3 to 6 our time together to make sure that it's preserved there, but that I also have this other time to do the other things for me that I need to do. And, you know, on topics we will and won't discuss, with all boundaries, I feel like this is important to say. With all boundaries in relationships, we might recognize someone needs something we can't meet, or that we need something that someone else can't meet. It will never jive. And that is where we have to walk our boundary and ourselves away, because we're in our own little circle. And if this thing over here keeps encroaching into our circle, it's on us to move. If we have said to this other entity, this other person, hey, this is my boundary. If we're going to be in relationship, This is the lines that we can't cross. If they come on in, that's information. And it sucks to recognize that someone cannot respect our boundaries. But that's important information so we can hightail it out of there and move on, right? So we shouldn't have to feel guilty for our boundaries because they're our way of saying, this is how I can actually be in a healthy relationship with you because I need this, this, and this. Not I need you to, but I need this for myself. So when people push against your boundaries, it's information. It's just showing you something about the relationship dynamic. It is revealing whether someone respects your autonomy or not. It's indicating their level of emotional maturity. And it's helping you understand who supports your well being. So, again, if someone is arguing against your boundaries, they're trying to tell you you should do something different, they're making demands of you, you can try and have a conversation about it. My rule is the three checks. I'll explain that a little bit after this part about what we need to remember. People who respect us will honor our limits. Boundary pushback does not mean our boundary is wrong. So just because someone is like having a fit about your boundary does not mean it's wrong. You do not need to justify or explain your boundaries extensively, especially if they're demanding an explanation. If they're making you feel guilty, that's probably all the more sign that they're not really going to listen. And healthy people want you to have boundaries because it creates these clear and more authentic relationships. So I always use the example of door slamming. And just because as a person with PTSD, this was really easy for me to understand. So let's say I need to not be around really loud noises because every time a door gets slammed or every time there's a huge loud noise, my nervous system gets really hijacked and I'm tense and tight in my body and it takes me a long time to come down. Now, that was absolutely true of me in the past. It could be true of you right now, right? Uh, the nervous system response isn't in our control. But let's say that the source of a lot of this distress is coming in the form of a roommate who keeps slamming doors. And so I go to this roommate and I say, hey, I have noticed that when you're coming in and out of whatever door or in and out of your bedroom or in and out of the back door, that you shut it pretty loudly. It makes a loud clang that echoes through the house. I feel really startled and triggered and upset when that happens because I have a real need for a calm, safe environment because of my past experiences. Would you be willing to not slam the door when you come in and out? Would you be willing to put some effort into more quietly shutting the door so it doesn't make a loud noise? Would be an even better way to word that. Let's say this person says, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So they agree. And then the next night, there they are slamming the door again. I'm going to say, hey, I know we just talked about this recently and you agreed that you would work on it. I know it's still new. I just want to remind you that this is a trigger for me. Would you be willing to continue putting effort into not slamming the doors? And they go, oh, yeah, of course. And then they immediately go and slam a door. They're socially agreeing with you, but they're not putting in the action, right? And after 3-4 times of this, I'm going to walk away. For me, it's the three strikes rule where I'm at this point in time. But I'm also going to assess, like, is this person making a genuine effort to meet me, or are they just saying they're going to do this thing and then they're totally not doing it? Because again, my boundary is drawn around myself. So if that roommate continues to slam doors and just is not working on it, and it doesn't matter what I do or I say or how I show up, they're going to continue to do that thing. It's time for me to find a new place to live. Sucks, but that's how boundaries work. I have to move myself and my circle somewhere else. So I use that as an example because it's like we can all imagine what that might be like, but it's usually a lot more nuanced than that, right? There's these boundaries that we have can be really challenging to articulate, but how are other people responding when we articulate our need and we ask for a slight change of plans? And again, we're not making a demand. We're saying, would you be willing to try this? So in the roommate slamming doors example, if I went and I said, I really, loud slamming doors activates my nervous system, blah, blah, blah. Would you be willing to? And they're like, no, I'm going to shut the door however I damn well please. Okay, that's still important information for me. For as long as I'm here, I'm probably going to have to deal with slamming doors. Is that something I want to deal with, or do I want to move? Right. So sometimes that someone saying no to our boundary is information we need. Sometimes if my cousin raises his voice, though not at me, it triggers my anxiety. Yeah. And that's like, we can have conversations around that. And it might be, we can't control if someone ever raises their voice or not, but we can absolutely ask for boundaries around how what we're willing to deal with when communication is happening, and whether we will continue to engage or whether we're going to walk out of the room. And so in that case, if that was my cousin or my friend and he raised his voice a lot, but it wasn't at me, I might just gently let him know, hey, I actually have had this conversation with my boyfriend because he would get a little irritable in traffic from time to time. And I'd never seen that side of him until traffic. And I was just like, hey, oh, I might lose power, y'all, because my power is flickering. So let's hope this continues. But like, hey, when you raise your voice in traffic, it scares me a little bit. Would you be willing to work on that at all? And he was like, yeah, of course. With your cousin, it might be, hey, I can't control you raising your voice at all, but I might leave the room. If you see me leave the room and your voice is raised, it's probably because I'm going off to manage my own anxiety. That gives me some anxiety, right? And again, we can communicate these things or try, or just remove ourselves. We can just, well, he's raising his voice again. I'm just going to go to my room and go do my thing, right? We have to assess what's right for our boundary. Can we articulate it and have someone meet us, or do we need to take ourselves and our circle elsewhere? Those are kind of our two big choices. All right. So considering your boundaries, consider phrasing such as, in order to preserve my energy, I need, I'm no longer available for, I'm now choosing to prioritize, or my boundary around this is XYZ. So lots of options on how we can articulate this. And you see this little lad with the circles around him, right? That's our boundary. That is that circle saying what I will and will not allow into this physical, energetic boundary around me. So I'm now choosing to prioritize my quiet time. So I'm going to make sure that every evening from 9 p.m. and on that I'm in my room doing my journaling and taking my quiet time, or I'm no longer available for loud argumentative conversations. So if people start to get escalated in a social setting, I'm going to remove myself. I'm not going to engage, things like that. And just to dispel some myths, boundaries are selfish. No, they're not. The truth is that boundaries create sustainable relationships and better energy for everyone because everyone's in that integrity. Again, you would not want to be pushing past someone's boundaries, knowing or unknowing. That doesn't feel good. So when other people draw their boundaries that are actually boundaries, not demands, it can feel really good because you know where you can and how you can connect with them without causing this extra unwanted distress. The myth, boundaries hurt other people. No, the truth is that clear boundaries prevent us from resenting one another, and they create the opportunity for authentic connection. People may try to fling at you that your boundaries hurt them, or that what you're saying hurts them, or that what you're not willing to do is hurting them, but that's usually manipulation. And again, an information and another sign that you probably want to hightail it out of there. And the myth that if someone loves you, they should automatically know your needs, your limits, your edges. That is so not true. Although I do have the gift of telepathy, it's not that strong, and not that many people have that gift. No one is truly a mind reader out there, even if they could pick up on subtexts, right? So clear communication prevents misunderstandings and it supports everyone. So when someone loves us, ideally they're telling us where their edges are. If we love someone, we're telling them where our edges are and what we are and are not willing to engage in a relationship. So I have 3 little ideas for you to just encourage you to assess your own boundaries. So the first is the breath boundary. So when someone comes to you with a request, pause to take a breath. Let me consider that a moment. And allow yourself some space to sit with the request. Use the breath to create some internal space and some clarity, and think a little, feel a little before you immediately say yes or no. Because I know a lot of you out there, if you're anything like me or anything like the me of the past, it was always an automatic yes. Of course, I'm going to do what they want me to do. So taking a breath. Oh, thanks for bringing that up to me. Give me a moment. And letting yourself check in. Now, a longer pause practice might be like, let me check my calendar and get back to you. I need to think about that and I'll respond tomorrow. I need to check my energy levels before committing. So this can be at any time something new comes in, a request, we can say full pause, not even just a breath pause, but full pause. I need a little bit more time to digest that and think about that. Let me get back to you. And then finally, an energy check, like really just asking, does this honor or deplete my energy before you do or engage with something? Notice your body's responses to a request and trust your initial gut reaction about whether it's a good energetic fit for you or not. All of these literally to say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Take a pause, take a breath, check in with your energy or your life force levels. How full is your cup before you immediately say yes to everything? What is your actual boundary around it? Is it a yes or a no? So, I want to just share before we go into a brief meditation here that, when I was first building my practice, I was quote unquote wildly successful by societal standards. I had built the 6-figure practice. I was constantly had a good stream of clients coming in. I did not lack for work. But the problem was I was literally like seeing 40 people a week, which as a person holding trauma is a lot. And I thought that if I was available all the time, it would make me a better therapist, eventually a better coach, a healer, and instead I was just constantly drained. And I started to notice that that drain was coming up on the limit of how much I could literally hold and still show up for my clients. And I knew that if I kept pushing myself beyond my actual energetic limits, beyond my actual boundaries, that I would be one of those really cruddy therapists who just is like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, wow, that's tough. And that would be all that I would have to give, and I would retain nothing. Like, what makes me such a powerful healer is that I remember my clients. I remember their stories and what they're going through. And that thing that happened when they were 3 that they're talking about now in their 40s, and I connect the dots. I can't do that if I'm holding too many people. And so I recognized my boundary with how many people I could actually do this with and how many people I could actually hold. And so I completely let go of my entire practice for 2 years so that I could step back in and actually have it be within my boundaries, what I can really lovingly commit to giving. And this was really, really hard. And I felt so guilty. And I felt like I was disappointing everybody and letting them all down because I let everyone go so that there was no favorite. There was no, you get the special treatment and you got to go. It's everyone so that I could come back into myself, find my boundary, find my limit, and then reemerge and say, okay, this is what I'm available for. And because of that, I am even better than I was before at being present and effective in my sessions. My clients every single session tell me how much they feel supported and seen because they can feel that I have more energy to give to them. And my work's more sustainable and aligned. I also have far more protected time for myself. Like I said, I don't work before 11 now. Oh my gosh. I used to work at 7 a.m. and then in my first therapy job, I worked at 9 a.m. And I was not at my best. That was not what I needed. So let's just take a moment here to breathe. This conversation might have brought up some things for you as you're recognizing the ways that you maybe overgive, the ways that you might not articulate your own needs. Maybe you're even thinking of times demands have been made of you or times you've been demanding of others. We all do it. And as you breathe here, I invite you to feel the energy flowing through your body, that life force. You might feel it in the air flowing through your lungs. You might feel it in the gentle pulse of your heart in your chest. You might feel energies. You might be able to feel your own auric field buzzing around your body. If there's a fan on or air conditioning, you might feel air on your skin. Feeling into your bones, perhaps your bottom on your seat if you are seated. Your feet on the floor, if your feet are on the floor, just noticing points of contact with what's around you. Maybe even noticing the feeling of clothes on your body or hair touching your skin. We're feeling into your energetic boundary, the boundary of your skin, the boundary of your field, this bubble around you. And as you breathe here, I invite you to allow my words to be reflected back in your own mind as if they were your own, or maybe even to say them out loud to yourself. My boundaries are sacred. My body is mine. I am in charge of how I spend my energy. I am in charge of how I spend my time. My boundaries protect me. My boundaries allow me to show up with love. My boundaries allow me to be loving with others. I am allowed to have limits. I am allowed to say no. I say yes when I mean yes. I say no when I mean no. My boundaries are sacred. I share what is a match for me. I release what is not for me. And I invite you to tune back into your breath, inhaling, calling yourself home, all goodness, all that is yours. And exhale, letting go of anything that is not for you, letting go of outdated patterns, overgiving, being boundaryless. Again, breathing in, calling yourself home, taking in what has value. Exhaling, letting go of whatever is not yours to carry. And then if your eyes are closed, you can gently blink them open in your own time. And take a moment to look around. Do a little no tiger twist here. letting our nervous systems know we're not in danger. We're not running from a tiger. We're right here, right now. So, big, big, big topic today, my friends. These boundaries are no joke. I know that it's easier said than done to reestablish our relationship with our boundaries, but the first step is remembering your boundaries are important. They're sacred. They help you be healthy and in loving relationships. So, the first step is to reorient your belief if you believe it's bad or wrong or that you need to be guilty or ashamed for having boundaries. Again, your boundaries are how you can be in happy, healthy relationships. So I invite you this week to choose one area to focus on, maybe your boundaries with your technology, your work, a specific relationship, and start small. Start small to build your confidence. Maybe I've been not scrolling articles in the morning for the last week. I've been doing a sheet of affirmations. I'll get on my phone and see if I have any messages from like family or anything, but that's literally it. And then I do my affirmations. That's my new tech boundary. And identify your specific energy leak. So, what is this? Not having this boundary, what is it causing you? What's draining you in this area? And what boundary would address that? What could you do differently? And then create your boundary language. So use I statements about what you will or won't do and practice saying it to yourself until it feels really natural. And ideally, write it down so you can see it and remember your own words. And then finally, communicate and implement. A boundary is only as powerful as you are willing for it to be. If you draw a boundary and you say, you know what, I'm not willing to be around somebody who slams doors all the time, and then you let yourself be around people who slam doors all the time, that's you not upholding your boundary. You have to be willing to uphold your boundaries. So that's why we want to think about them first, practice them a little bit, make sure they're solid in us, and then communicate it clearly and kindly with others and say, are you willing to, do XYZ to help me with this? And then staying consistent and noticing how we are impacted overall. Yeah, Lisa, I'm so glad you could tune into this today. And as always, you all are so very welcome for this. This concludes our air arc. And so when we return in episode 11, we're going to be moving into fire and aligned actions. And so we're moving out of air and energy into fire and taking action, actually using our spiritual fuel to, move us into new territory. So, we'll talk about the spark of intention and authentic motivation, moving from energy protection into energy direction. So, okay, we've got our boundaries. How do we now move out and forward? And creating aligned actions that serve our goals, as well as daily practices that honor our unique blueprint so we can keep tuning into these forces. So, we are going to move right into taking that purposeful action without depletion because you get to redefine all of your relationship with success. You get to redefine how you show up in the world and how you use your own internal forces, your energy, your elements for the power of your highest good and the highest good of those around you. So, I love you all so much. If you have any questions or ideas or things you hope I will cover, whether in the fire arc or another upcoming arc, I am delighted to be on this journey with you and so happy to meet your needs or answer your questions if you have them. So don't hesitate to reach out, whether at guide@safriana.com or wherever else you tune into me. I am happy to serve. So until next time, my friends, I'm Safriana Luna. I love you so much. I see you, I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on. Bye for now.